Last.
I can't keep up.
Hello.
Where can I go?
So, minutes. Anybody have corrections? Joanne took it upon herself to make a correction, which I did get via email. So, is everybody appraised of that little addition? She added.
Oh, I saw that.
You saw
Yeah.
that, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's need to approve. We don't have to.
I
We have to do a
move that we
motion.
approve the meetings from
Where's
the
Gordon's
previous
away.
meeting on December 11th.
Second.
Any discussions? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, so I didn't see any other issues. Good minutes. Does anybody know about Dave or Ian? Are they coming or not? Ian away or nobody know? Okay, so communications. I circulated an email this morning that I got about an alternative system.
Yes,
Yep.
I saw that.
Steve, did you manage to
I didn't
see it at all?
actually get it. I got the email, but I didn't do it tonight when I get home.
Does anybody know about that? What do they call it? The Omega system? It sounds like a kind of glorified field. Processed to a fairly high level, and put into a leach field, through several leach fields.
5,000
And then-
gallons or something.
No, 25.
Or 25, but you could do
day.
5,000.
No, it can do
Or 50.
52, it can
Yeah,
do
up to
52, it's
52.
using
A day?
a little over 5
But
now.
it's going to be the same problem, is that it's,
Oh.
not a
Where?
system
Where?
approved in Connecticut.
Yeah, that was my question. I was hoping Steve might know an answer to, but he didn't see it, so.
It
I'll
looks
only-
very much like the one we went to visit up in
Up in
New York
Citrus
State, wherever
New
that
York
was.
State, yeah, that's what I thought too. Except it got pumped down into an aquifer.
Yeah.
So Steve felt that once you treat it to that high a level, probably it's more sensible to put it into a water stream. But I only bring it up just because it was a communication and it was sent directly to me. Nobody else got it. I thought, well, circulate it.
Yeah.
And if anybody has
I appreciate that.
strong feelings about it or knows anything about it, let's hear about it. It didn't
thought-
seem like it was anything that new.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in that it showed the really enormous range of options that are out there for all sizes of things. People are really thinking about this
Mhm.
in a very productive way. So, I find that encouraging.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
but they're all not in Connecticut.
True. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we went and visited one that Steve put in that was in Connecticut. There are some in Connecticut, but they are formidable projects, requiring a lot of agreement amongst people and abilities to allocate monies, resources, and make decisions. So it does get done if the will is there. So I've got a little bit of housekeeping stuff that we should do. Steve has asked if we could jump up because he's got some car trouble issues in his family. Does anybody mind if we put housekeeping below? Is there any problem with that?
No,
No.
So that we can get right into the portion of this that Steve can address. So the site visit did take place. I was really glad to see that had happened. I know the weather was a big issue. And I'd like to start with Steve's reaction to the new sites that you went to, or the sites that we hadn't already visited, and then maybe bundle it into
Yeah, I mean,
relative to the old sites.
they're all of interest. They're, small sites, of course, but if we're talking about the type of service area that we've been talking about lately, which is pretty confined, whatever type of treatment system you're going to be looking at is going to be really relatively tiny. I've been talking to some folks about different technologies that, like you said, there's a bunch of technology out there, and they're putting these things in apartment buildings,
Yeah.
with the tankage outside and very, very tiny. So the lot sizes don't appear to be a problem. One of the issues we've been discussing internally in our office is the power requirements for any type of treatment system that requires blowers or aeration systems, for example. And typically they want to see three-phase power, which you have in the center of town, but you don't have it out in the northerly sections, the larger parts out there. So that's going to be an issue that we'll discuss in the next phase of the reports, is the need for that and how do you get around it if you can, or if you can't get around it, what are the costs of extending three-phase power to a remote site. So having said that, typically, something closer to the center of town would be preferable for a system. The sites we looked at were relatively small. One was sort of up, and you guys know the names of the properties, I don't, but the property that's furthest to the east, I would say, up the hill quite a ways.
Susan,
I believe someone's still living in that house.
Susan Hellman's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Barbara
so,
Farnsworth's building, right?
Is that what it was?
yeah,
No,
well,
it's up past there.
just beyond the bookstore, there's a woman who
Well,
has
That's
just,
the
It
ocean.
had quite a driveway going up the hill that was a little bit slippery to walk up
Yep.
when we got in there. I mean, that's kind of an isolated site, actually. It is uphill, so anything that you do would have to be pumped to it, but that's not an issue.
Is he talking about the Disnotis house up way up the road?
no,
No.
but it is beyond the Farnsworth.
It's Barbara Betsy Ocean's house.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
right across
It
the
was
street
Betsy
from Barbara
Ocean's.
Farnsworth.
Yeah.
It
Was-
actually was Tom and John's.
Susan Hellman.
Hellman's the name.
Susan
It's
Hellman's
right on,
house.
it's right
So
on the
that's a
brook.
good site?
It's a good size, a decent size site. The only downside is it's up a hill. It's well elevated above the brook, so it's got
Yes.
no issues with flooding and that sort of thing. Three-phase power, I believe, is right across the brook from there.
Yep.
Because it goes to your area, and so that has some good possibilities, I would say. It's got an existing building or two on it that would have to be removed and something else put in their place, but and I'm not sure if anybody knows who the ownership of the drive, I would assume that the drive going in there is, that property owner either owns it or has a right-of-way.
See, Gordon would know the answers to these,
Yeah.
that's Smith Place, right?
Good place.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
There
that's a
is-
town road?
It's a town road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's positive also.
All right, so that,
actually believe that's a town road past.
Yeah, well, Gordon would be able to,
I think the
Might
town
be some
part
sure.
of it ends at the
Parking lot for
parking lot at the
the...
bottom.
But
Okay.
there's a right of way because when Tom and John owned it, there was the right of way, and then when Betsy owned it, there was still. But the only problem was up the hill. If you parked or on Barbara's property, they didn't like that.
No.
That was a
Yeah.
problem for
No.
parking. But I mean that.
Barbara's the neighbor towards the
Yeah,
west?
yeah, yeah. And Tom wasn't thrilled that people parked up the road.
So nobody has to park.
No,
No.
no.
no, in any event, there was, a couple sites we looked at, looked like just about, that one's probably the most promising in terms of size, you want enough room around it, and it's a little more remote from the private residences, which I know we've all got a concern about that. So, no one wants it near the residences.
Size,
No one, but
size-wise relative to the Griggs property?
I think it's a little bit larger, and there's a well on your property.
Yes, there is.
That's I'd have to look into that in a little more detail, because that's right in the middle of where the space kind of is. So, I mean, wells can be relocated, but nonetheless,
It's not bothering any neighbors, per se.
no.
That's a big advantage.
Yeah.
Same thing, what about the old meat market? That'd be the prime spot, because, it's an abandoned building right now.
Yeah, right, yeah, it is. That building looks in relatively good condition outside, doesn't it, or?
It's just empty inside.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just thinking in the future, if you're looking at this type of project to kind of enhance the viability of the West Cornwall Village, that seems to be a place that someone might want to have a business.
Yeah, but you could do both, couldn't you? You could put that
Potentially.
in the business.
Potentially.
Have it in the basement and then.
Yeah.
If you're pumping uphill
There's a well
already,
right there though, too.
Yeah.
I said if we had to pump uphill already to go to that the final spot on the road,
Yeah,
it seemed to make sense, and just a question in passing that, because that is a more sizable lot,
right.
could you go underground in that location?
Possibly could, yeah. So everything, most of the technologies that are going to meet any kind of DEP requirements in terms of as we briefly talked before the group came here, you're looking for something, if you're looking at treating the wastewater and then discharging it to the river, the system has to be ultra reliable and very robust and consistently meet effluent limitations. So almost all those systems that do that have some kind of structure above ground, small building type of thing. But the more we look at the containing your area of concern down to the business, you're talking of, a quarter of the flow that we were talking about for the whole area. 12,000 gallons a day is close to 60,000 gallons a day. So 12,000 gallons a day is really not very big at all. So thus the system.
Well, I'm still in favor of the filtration system above ground because there was no smell associated with that.
No, as I said,
Whereas when we went to Hillsdale,
Yeah.
which was a below the ground system,
The
there
system
was
we
no.
have today, it's not
I don't think
necessarily.
he's talking about below ground versus above ground means the facility. I don't think
Okay.
it's not the disposal.
No,
Yeah.
no, but the technology today for these small package type of treatment systems, again, they're putting them right in apartment buildings, inside the building, with no ill effects for anybody.
And that brings me to a question. You used the term relatively small. So early on,
Yeah,
when you say relatively small, we're now talking about a system that's relatively smaller than the first one you
Correct,
designed in the
correct.
final draft of
correct. Yeah.
down by the
Yeah,
bend.
definitely small.
So what would be, so now if, God forbid, the system did go down at the bend,
Yeah.
it would be much smaller.
Oh, absolutely.
How much? 50%?
Yeah,
25%?
probably.
So that may have an impact
Yeah.
for people.
But that's the type of thing we'll be looking at,
Yeah.
And then quite honestly, if the community's interested in moving ahead with some type of treatment and disposal system to sort of help revitalize West Cornwall, there's a lot of different technologies that can be used. It's almost like you could specify in a bid document effluent requirements that the system has to reliably meet. And people could propose different technologies that meet those criteria. So it doesn't have to necessarily be what we suggested in the report, the membrane bioreactor technology. We just find that to be very reliable and very robust. But there's other technologies that can be looked at as well.
At comparable costs or?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe even less. Maybe even less. But again, it has to be reliable because you have to meet the effluent limitations all the time.
Yeah.
Seems to me we have to focus on one site or a site.
Well, I
Try
think-
to see if we can.
Yeah, I think what our call to duty is to look at the various sites, pluses and minuses. We'll put together a matrix type of situation, pluses and minuses of the various sites, and the costs associated with the sites. And they're all going to have different costs associated with them. Whether we have to go a mile down the road to the north, to the field area, and that's a substantial cost. And if you have to bring three-phase power up there, it's a very substantial cost. And that's going to all shake out in the following report.
And I think that the added variable, or one of the added variables, I know Gordon is very concerned about, is ownership of the property underneath.
Mhm.
So that's why he's particularly focused when somebody steps forward and offers a place they own.
Mhm.
So there's not this great,
So no long-term leases or any of that
or,
stuff?
Well, the town
or
would have to
difficult
buy it.
negotiations, or then, who,
So it's easy.
yeah, and who liabilities for brownfields and all those kinds of things that you bump into down at the bend.
Well, the town would have to buy it. The property would be.
Well, CLMP
Wherever it is.
wouldn't sell it necessarily.
No, I mean, they won't sell the bend, but I mean, the other properties in town.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's the concept, is that somebody would have to own it, somebody would have to, it'd have to be a deal made as to
Yeah, absolutely.
how it gets used
Yeah.
and what's the,
Yeah,
what's
again,
the,
the DEP is involved in the permitting, which of any type of system, the DEP is going to be involved in the permitting, whatever the system may be. They're going to want to know that that's all ironed out property-wise, that the town has ownership, or I'm not even sure they'd allow a 100-year lease. They might want to say the town's got to own the property, because they don't want something happening in the future where all of a sudden, whoa, we have to remove our facility or whatever, and now what's Cornwall going to do?
yeah.
That's not a good thing for DEP.
I read about a lease, I think Guinness Brewery or something has a 90,000 year lease.
How do we go forward? I mean, how do we narrow this down to? I mean, You're trying to.
Well, I
progress,
mean,
so-
that's what we're trying very hard to do in order to be able to propose something that the town can sink its teeth into and give a thumbs up or thumbs down to, even moving forward in the investigation. So,
Would we want to pick like 3 of the best options?
well, the
We're
word
gonna-
Steve used was matrix. I
Yeah,
like the
it'll
sound.
narrow down pretty quickly.
So when the report, and we've contracted for another amount of work, and that work will yield a report which will hopefully have enough detail in it to,
Oh, it will. It'll be down to the cost per user, potentially. It can't be totally accurate, but we'll make some assumptions in terms of grants and loans and that type of thing.
So what are you waiting for, Steve? The results from the mailing from the Board of Selectmen to homeowners? I mean, I honestly
Right.
thought we were gonna see something tonight.
Oh.
We don't have any hard numbers. I mean, it seems to me it sounds like Groundhog's Day, as someone said to me, that we keep going over the same things, and we don't, nothing's moving.
well,
What do you need to get us something?
I've got everything I need at this point to move ahead. And then Todd and I have talked a little bit about the schedule for delivery of this. I know you have some meeting dates and issues,
right,
which you can discuss.
yeah.
Like, what dates are you
I'm good
having
for
in mind?
anything. I'm good for any meeting. But I know Todd's going to be away for the next couple months.
Effectively meeting-wise I am, but,
Well, then maybe Todd doesn't want to be president.
Right, that's
Committee
that's
chair
part of-
anymore. I don't know. How do we make something happen?
well, I mean, we have been making something. We've had a walkthrough, we've had a meeting.
I mean, basically,
we've-
That was just the
people
end
are
of
picking
December, and
sites.
it's been through the holidays, so I don't think it's unreasonable that he doesn't have.
I'm not sure when the selectmen voted to let us go ahead, but it wasn't until
Yeah,
last week.
Yeah.
so anyway, we are moving ahead.
There's
and
more than
the
a
plan
week's worth
is-
of work to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so the plan is what?
Well, we will need a letter from the selectmen. That's item number B here. Strategy to identify immediate users of the system. So I noticed in watching the video, the great videos that Richard does of the last selectmen's meeting, that the plan was to get a letter circulated to the potential users in West Cornwall. I think you actually was the one who mentioned it in that meeting.
Right, well, I think, yeah.
So do you have a schedule on that, or?
Well, initially, when it gets drafted and created, it's going to come back to your
Right.
board.
Right, we were gonna
some
get
level of
opportunity
approval, whether it
to
be you
vet
or
it.
the whole board.
Yeah.
I think it's a letter that will ask people in some fashion, are they absolutely interested, absolutely not interested? You know, maybe yes, maybe no. I mean,
Right.
there may be some fashion of
Yeah.
multiple set of answers available to them.
Right. So that will be, Steve is going to need that, I think, in
I
order
mean,
to
that's good information to get. I've got a pretty
get
good
it narrowed
feel.
down to a per user number.
Right, I've got a pretty good feel as to the amount of flow we're going to be looking at for the base area. Based on all the meetings we've had with the residents around, it's pretty obvious that the people outside of the kind of the business core there don't have much interest in, I don't want to speak for anybody, but it just seems to me they have less than zero interest in tying into the system because their systems are working. So with that note, I have a pretty good handle on the flow, but it would be nice to have a handle on, how many actual business owners or property owners are interested. Because it does come down to that, Todd, you're absolutely correct. The cost per unit.
Right, well, I know that's,
I
that's
thought
what,
originally the estimate was based on all of the housing, even though some of them do not want to hook up to it.
We did several options. We did at least two, maybe even more. We did one with everybody is going to be involved. And then we did all the way down to the core area, quote unquote, which is basically the business area, and there might be one or two residences in that area.
Yeah.
And we ran costs, all those costs are in our report, even down to the unit cost per user. Those are all in the report. I've got to refine those based upon different sites, different costs associated with that, and a little better handle on if we get stuff back from the property owners. Are there in fact 12,000 gallons per day of interest in there, or is it only 3 property owners are interested?
yes.
Just a question. Would it make sense to consider, if we are going to have an opt-in, opt-out kind of decision made in the village, to install not feeder pipes, I don't know the language, extend out into those further neighborhoods in case at some later date, the householders did want to
Yeah,
hook up?
typically, engineers are real conservative people. They tend to try to look into the future and plan for everything, and you can't. But having said that, normally when you design a sewer system to serve a small area of town, if there are adjacent areas to it that could potentially need it or want it in the future, we allow for connections for that purpose.
Okay, good. Because I would think that would be important.
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
this.
we
In
try to get the
particular-
flexibility so that if something happens in the future catastrophically, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden certain areas, or the state comes in and says, you shall
You have to, yeah.
do something.
But also, in the event that a line passes a house that, let's say, is not interested right now, thank you very much.
Yeah,
But some day down the road, some owner would like to plug in.
exactly.
That ought to be a
Right.
facilitatable.
Yeah, and again, we have to be careful of all of that too, because we've talked many times about assessments and benefit assessments, if you recall all that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if the property has access to a sanitary sewer by state statute, they can be and should be assessed for the cost, their share of the cost of that sewer, if it goes by their house and it's available to them.
What happens if it doesn't go by their house, but goes near their, in other words,
They have to have direct access to it.
to the
But
place?
isn't that a town ordinance, that sort of thing?
It would have to be a town ordinance, correct?
Yeah, but the state would insist on that?
No, it's
No. Well, then,
state statutorily
bust out.
says you can do it. If the town decides, we're just gonna charge people that connect up, and it's designed for 20 homes, or 20 businesses, I should say, and only 2 connect up, and then 2 are gonna pay for the whole cost, that's not gonna, in my opinion, that's not gonna go ahead. Unless someone's got a lot of money that they want to donate to the system, because it's gonna be cost prohibitive per unit.
Well, I did a call around, I did this survey
Yeah,
prior to
Yes.
us starting the whole thing, and everybody on Main Street or Railroad Square were interested,
mhm,
and I think they'll say that formally at some point.
yeah, that would be
And
excellent.
everybody who was out of that area was not interested.
Right, right.
And so, you know, for a feeder pipe for everything on the south side of the street, south side of the brook, that's no problem, they can hook in anytime. The question is whether you would put a feeder to the north side of the brook.
You wouldn't
Because you'd
necessarily.
have to go,
Yeah, you wouldn't
that would be
necessarily put
more
a feeder. What you
problematic.
do is, depending on how the system is designed, whether it's a gravity system or a pressurized system, you put valving in and manholes in at access points that could be tapped into in the
tapped in
future.
later.
Yeah, correct. You don't install any piping necessarily for them. Why spend that money now if you don't know if you're ever gonna need it?
Okay, so as far as the selectmen, you think by next meeting or sometime in February will be a letter? Can we count on that? Or
I know it's in our
you're a
pipeline.
select person?
Well, we both are.
Yeah.
I will request that we have a letter prepared for the next selectmen's meeting. Gordon is away right now,
Right.
but he'll be back for our next meeting, which we've made a week later than usual because of his absence. So that's the last meeting in January. And I'll go in and ask Joyce to get the letter together for us so that we can then
Start.
refer it to this group
Right.
for our next meeting, which I think is February 13th. Is that right? Yes, February 13th.
Right,
So we-
perhaps, depending on who's
Well-
around and all that. Yeah, it's scheduled for that, yeah,
I'll do that much. And
yeah. Okay, so we'll just say end of January on that.
the next selectmen's meeting, I think, is January
Steve, there's also
22nd.
on site, possible sites 2 doors up from the toll house.
Mhm,
There's a building there that's
mhm,
available.
mhm.
The site 2 stores up from the toll house
Yeah,
has offered,
yeah. I
Joe?
mean, yeah, Lush's building.
has he
It's on
offered?
the market,
Yeah, but
not formally, but it's available.
you've had talks?
I've had talks.
And in the selectmen's meeting, your toll house came up.
Toll house could be one of them.
I kinda like that idea.
Well, I mean, if the town bought the toll house, I would rent the part they didn't use.
Mhm.
I'd be happy to live next to it.
Yeah.
That's
See,
the
this-
gravity feed
Yeah.
system.
Yeah, this is a gray area, really, in my mind, is, you know, have people on this committee
No, I wouldn't vote on something like that.
Right, well,
Yeah.
at some point, somebody's gonna have to weigh in on what the,
Well, the concept-
the logistics is.
The overall
I mean,
concept.
it's a small town. I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, exactly. The overall concept is to come up with some plan that where you know in round numbers and firm numbers, the cost of what this is gonna take and how much it's gonna cost per user to do it. To exactly pick the site at this point in time doesn't need to be done. That's something where it can be worked on during the design of the project, negotiating with property owners, all that can be done during the design of the process. What you don't wanna happen is find out that your plan for a certain parcel, when it comes down to design, oh, that parcel's no longer available, now you gotta go this further away, it's gonna cost us more money, and then there's an issue.
Yeah, but it's clearly, one of the issues is which parcel.
Right.
So we have
Right.
to,
Well,
you don't want to sort of focus on a parcel and then find out, no, the town's not going to permit that.
that's correct, yeah. Right.
So we kind of have to
Yeah.
identify which parcels we're looking at
Yeah.
and attach a number to each
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And then go to the town and say, which one do you want? Or do you want none of them? Or,
Or do you vote on the worst case scenario, cost-wise, with the refinement to come during the design of the project? In other words, you vote on, let's say the northern parcel's $1 million more, or whatever we said in our report. Maybe the town fathers decide to vote on that proposal as a worst case scenario
worst case, define
in terms
that.
of cost,
Cost.
Just
Most
cost.
expensive.
most expensive.
Okay.
And
At
then,
least,
Because
at
it's so.
least initially, right, Steve?
Correct.
So are you going to do an initial cost and a long-term cost estimate?
I'm doing yes,
Yes.
yes.
I mean, because I keep going back to the comment we heard in Hillsdale,
Yeah.
is that it's definitely cheaper to, dump it into the river initially.
Right.
But his experience with a number of other systems is that long-term, it always winds up being more expensive, long-term.
But not because you're dumping it into the river, just because that's what happens with costs. That was the comment. It had nothing to do with the river. Dump it where it
Well,
was being
it-
dumped. It had to do with.
It had to do with the difference between dumping it into the river
No,
or
no,
into an
no. It had to
underground
do with
system.
underestimating what the maintenance costs are. He said we costed it at $10,000. It's double that.
Right.
It wasn't because where it was being done.
No, it was more to do with the maintenance issues,
Yeah.
which is part of our call to duty, is to come up with good long-term maintenance costs.
Yeah.
Predicting everything perfectly with a crystal ball is somewhat difficult when the DEP is involved. And I can tell you right now, if any system of any type gets installed in West Cornwall, the DEP will permit it. They will be involved, no matter what you do.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, but it's the difference between DEP being involved and the federal government being involved,
DEP
right?
administers a program for the federal government. The federal government, in my experience, I've never had them, occasionally they've gotten involved in huge projects or City of Hartford type projects or serious, very serious pollution problems with raw wastewater going into the Connecticut River, that type of thing. EPA will get involved. For the most part, the DEP handles everything.
Except that they can issue an NFT's permit, right?
Yes, they can. It's a federal permit, but the DEP is the one that approves it.
Administers it
It's
after
administered. And that's
after it's
correct.
approved.
That's correct.
Okay, so, are there any other questions regarding specific sites that have been visited or things relative to that?
I'm sorry, I
Go ahead.
wasn't
No,
on the
definitely.
tour, and I apologize for the site visits. But how big is Susan Hellman's property anyway? I thought it
It's
comes up
about an
against.
acre. It's just under an acre, as I
It
remember.
is, and
Yeah.
you can still do this on, well, you're gonna have to, the zoning is gonna get involved. We'll probably have to have a special permit and all that jazz, but
Are you
That's part of
talking
it.
where the old meat market was?
No,
No, uphill.
that's Susan
Just up from
Costello.
Across
Up that road
Across
first,
the
at the
street,
end of that
just
road,
up past.
there's a lot back there, and it's got the hill that goes right behind it.
yeah.
There's no neighbor on that side, there's a river on that side.
It's got that
It's a
little
very
shed.
attractive site because even though we'd have to pump that location, there's, right, currently the only neighbor is Barbara Farnsworth's building.
Yeah.
I see.
So you said it was about
And
a half
Barbara
an acre,
Farm.
is that
There are
correct?
people across the
And
street.
Barbara.
About a
Yeah,
half an
just-
acre, you
no,
said?
No, it's
There are
just
houses
under
across
an
the
acre.
street.
I thought it was,
You weren't talking.
I don't have it in my head, but I want to say 8/10 of an
That are
acre.
for sale.
One is, yeah. There are houses right across the street. I'm just,
Across the brook.
Yeah.
Across
Across-
the road.
the road, across Goshen.
Yeah, but there's a
Cornwall.
river between them and a forest. And
Um,
I mean, it's a nicely isolated
It's-
spot.
it-
It's
I know,
attractive
I'm-
because it seems that,
It's
you know, I
much-
don't think we're gonna vote on the worst case dollar scenario. I think we need to locate a site that everybody's comfortable with
Yeah,
allowing it to be there.
yeah.
And that
That's
that
gonna
would
be difficult at best, as we know.
Sure. Yeah. I thought I.
Barbara, you don't want it anywhere in town, right?
No.
Yeah, so we're not gonna be able to please everybody, so.
I mean, you keep saying you're gonna find another site, and we keep coming back to the same thing, and
Yeah,
it's,
we're-
we do
Is
have
that true,
wells.
Barbara? We've got
We do
different
have,
options here.
I know, I'm just saying, if it's way up on the hill, you know, we all have wells down below it, that's all. You know, you
No,
got-
they're not talking.
What do you think's
it's not
happening
gonna
now,
affect you.
What?
What do you think's happening now?
Well, our well is fine.
Well, but you're all
Well, yeah,
downhill.
who knows what's gonna happen with the wells? I mean, that's the thing, since there's not so many proper septics around, how about the well water? Everybody should have their well water tested right
We
now.
actually talked
The
about
deed-
that.
We're
as
gonna do
being
some
part of
additional
it.
well
That's
testing.
what we're talking about.
We will be doing some additional well testing as part of this next phase.
Because that could be very important. You might find a lot of people that their wells are not that palatable.
Yeah, typically, we find that if the wells are what we call a drilled well, typically deeper wells drilled into rock or deep sediments or whatever, those rarely show signs of bacterial pollution, certainly, maybe some nitrogen, but because they're built according to the health code, they're properly sealed, and by the time any wastewater gets there, it's renovated to the point where it's not going to cause an issue. But if you have a shallow well, and there are still a number of shallow wells around, and we're going to look at those, then those are very susceptible to pollution from septic systems.
Yeah, but isn't it worse to have malfunctioning septic systems in a village than a treatment plant?
But none of them are, name one that's not functioning. That's what everybody keeps saying are
Oh, I
non-functioning
can name you
septic
a half
systems.
dozen.
Betsy's is functioning, mine, so all of ours are functioning.
Well, actually,
Oh,
the
name
woman's-
half a dozen in the village.
Yours are,
Yes.
but yours
Betsy's
is probably, you know, if yours was dye tested, would you see it in the river? Probably.
We had a check before we bought the house and it's fine, but name a half a dozen. Everybody keeps saying that, and that's a real point of friction. It's not, there's not a half dozen of those septic systems not working. Could they not work? Sure, but as of now, there's not. That's,
But it
because,
depends how you define not working. I
Yes,
think that's what
exactly.
Georgian Area Health has
Yeah, working-
indicated.
right,
Well, first of all, they don't have any real
Limitations.
plans for anything that was built before 1980.
right.
So how many
Yeah.
systems in West
But
Cornwall?
I think this was the thing to try to sell, because I've had other people in town say, well, you people down there, your septic systems are not working. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's just not
It
true.
is true, though.
Well,
You're doing it a
Yes,
little bit too
you
fun.
should, I don't think you should say it in a public meeting.
Yeah.
It's
I'll be
accusing
happy
people of
to-
something.
To do
Yeah.
the tour with you and show you the ones that aren't working.
Okay,
Or,
Yeah, it's-
and/or are limited.
Just put
It's a s-
maybe in front of me.
It's a scientific.
I mean, we have to have our septic system pumped once a year.
yep. We have ours.
Everybody does.
It doesn't mean it's not working.
No, it's
Right.
working fine, but it's, you know,
Right.
Because you have several.
we have tenants, yes.
Yeah.
That- Lisa, you brought up, you mentioned the word zoning. Now, I would have assumed at some point Gordon would have brought that up had it been an issue.
Well,
because-
typically, what we find, I don't want to interrupt.
Karen's.
I'm sorry.
I
Okay.
brought up the possibility,
Yeah.
Karen, about the property that Susan Hellman owns, which is an acre plus or minus, and she's perhaps offering to sell some of it. Would that would mean a subdivision, right? And would mean, you know, what?
Well,
Probably.
I mean,
you know,
this is-
no, I don't think anybody's talking about buying part of the parcel,
Sure, sure, yep,
the whole parcel,
The whole.
the whole parcel.
you're buying Susan's house too?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, that's
Yes.
gotta go.
Yes.
Oh, the house has to go?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm back to.
But as far as zoning
Yeah.
issues
so
go,
I-
typically that's not, you might have to go through some zoning procedures, but typically when, for a municipal facility like a school, firehouse, treatment plant, the town typically, I don't know, I haven't studied your zoning regs, but typically their towns have a right to put those in because they're needed facilities.
Well, I'm
But-
glad to have had some discussion about this, because it's had occurred to me at some point, whether or not zoning has a dog in this fight, as they say.
I think that the zoning regulations allow municipal improvements.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's part of,
yeah.
maintaining.
That's
building
very, very
municipality.
typical.
Yeah, it would be important to.
Sorry, I didn't realize that.
No,
I
that's
was
good. I'm glad it got.
Gonna go.
So.
This isn't an
Yeah.
offer by Susan. This isn't a
Mhm.
foregone conclusion that it's going to
That's right,
occur.
that's right.
No.
It's just,
Yes, yeah.
It's just a possibility we looked at a site.
right, as along with several other sites.
It's also, yeah.
You know, you could, for pluses and minuses, maybe Eversource isn't interested in negotiating a lease. Maybe Susan's not interested in selling it at whatever price. Maybe Ian's property is this, that, or the other. I mean, every site has reasons that it'll work and reasons that it won't work. And that's part of what has to be studied.
That's what we need, the matrix,
Yeah.
so we can stop talking
That'd be
about
great
it.
to have, yeah.
Was your site big enough, Ian? I didn't think it was big enough. That's what I thought.
Which one?
The toll house.
Oh, right.
Well, it's more than the toll house. He's got that whole showroom area that could be.
Oh, because I thought it just wasn't big enough, so I thought when someone
Well,
mentioned
not
that.
my preference.
But yeah,
But, you know, the town's needs are larger than my individual needs. But Joe Lush's old building, same size, that's big enough. These things are not that big if you look at the size of them.
Right.
I mean, it probably could fit in the front, the actual toll house part, you know, without the back end. You know, so it could certainly fit in Joe Lush's house. It could fit in the meat market. But, I mean, I agree, I'd like to see the meat market be a business again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it could be a multi-purpose building, that's
If it
for
was,
sure.
if it was on Bianca's land, you
Sorry?
know.
No parking.
Right, now we looked at the old Utzlers,
Yeah.
and you made the comment about parking as a
Well, it was more
problem.
parking, not so much for the facility itself, parking for whatever business might be utilizing it. I mean,
Right.
businesses typically need parking.
Yeah,
And to utilize the parking area, potential parking area for a treatment plant, it's like, okay,
yeah, right, so perhaps it's not a good idea
Yeah.
to have it multi-purpose,
right.
specifically because of parking.
But isn't it true that you can put put a parking lot on top of a system? A lot
You
of
can put the
places
parking
do
on
that.
top of the tankage, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Saybrook had that as well.
Yes.
so, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's tight down in Sabre. You saw the parcels down there. Everything's under the parking lots basically, except for the treatment systems.
Yeah.
The treatment part itself.
Okay, that brings us to a continuing discussion about the delivery of a final recommendation to the selectmen. We're not going to decide this tonight, but I think we should keep trying to carve out a concept in order to assist the selectmen in their work to bring something to a ballot, to bring an issue to ballot.
Something that can be presented to the town.
Right, and
that's
it's got to
the
be concise, it can't have too many moving parts, can't be vague. They've got to be able to vote a yes or a no, an up or a down, I don't know, I'm not an expert in developing ballot questions, but that's kind of where we're headed. And once we get some feedback, we can be more clear on our focus of what we're doing, because this clearly can't go on much longer. This, you know, as we've said, back and forth, the same issue.
There is a conventional wisdom that in a case like this, this group, which has worked hard to develop these ideas, gotten a lot of input from people, should make one choice and recommend that to the selectmen and have that go to the ballot.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. You don't want to put up 3 or 4 options that the public, which has not been involved in these discussions,
Right.
isn't really capable of dealing with it. That
Right.
kind of chaos developed
I
for
know.
those of us who were here back in the day when we were trying to get the town offices up in Rumsey Hall or whatever that was all about. And the whole town just ground to a halt. I mean, couldn't decide, couldn't make up, and ballots would go out with 2 options on it, nothing would be chosen. And that
Nothing would,
really.
why wouldn't anything be chosen? We
Well,
wouldn't have
because
enough of
it
a majority?
literally- There was a vote that was literally, in my memory now, those who probably, other people remember this differently. I think there was a vote which was almost a tie.
Yeah, ties
Of
are.
hundreds of
down.
people voting on this thing. And it was clear that there was not a
Consensus.
consensus.
Right.
And that I really, really think we need to avoid that.
Well, I mean, when I do sort of projection thinking about this, that's precisely where I get.
Yeah.
And there seems to be these 2, well, actually, there's 3 issues. One is location, siting, as Gordon calls it. The other is cost. And then the third is
Scope.
thumbs down. I don't want it, no matter what. So that's 3 at least,
Yeah,
not
see,
2.
I don't know how, I've given Priscilla a sort of a note to give to the selectmen about the financial issue for householders. I think there's a real equity issue here, that no one should be prevented from hooking up, if they'd like to this system because of lack of funds to do that. I think that's really not.
Well, the town could pass an ordinance
Yeah.
where they would put a lien on the property, and then when the property is sold, they would get the money back. So a
This is
person who
true.
did not have funding at the moment, I mean, they do that in a lot of other towns. I mean, I think that's
Okay,
a way down
all right.
the road
But this is
issue,
what I think.
but
what
very
people-
solvable. That's not a
Right,
real
okay,
problem.
there's a lien, there's also a possibility of arranging to get funding either by bonding, financing of some sort, to sort of take care and support the first 3 years, say, when the system's available for hookups, so that people could call upon money. This is the kind of thing, the housing committee of the town plan is looking at ideas like this, of having some funds that can be drawn on either as a loan or as an outright grant. You know, because I think it's that important.
Yeah.
I really, really do.
Well, I don't think anybody's ever felt that something like this could be paid for simply by the people who are using it.
Oh, God, no.
So clearly the town is going to be involved at some level. The
Okay.
state will be involved in the fund granting level, and money will have to be found. Yeah, I did want him just to stick around for this little
Yeah, that's
part of the
fine. I'm good.
conversation, and then, yeah, for sure. So, but I do think that discussion should take place on the other side of the town's decision as to whether or not to move forward or not move forward. Because the town could
Okay.
say, we're not interested in this, period.
Okay,
At which
whether-
point we've wasted a lot of time.
In any case, right, okay.
So we're waiting for Steve to get back to us with
Right,
The
the
cost.
matrix.
yeah.
And
And
the-
then
and the
at
pluses
another
and
meeting
minuses.
sometime in the spring, we'll,
Yeah,
I think we came up with
Spring, what
a...
happened in February, March?
Right, well, that's what
the
we're going to
letter's
talk
gotta go
about.
out. It's gotta get answered, you gotta give them a month to
I
answer.
have to test
I
some
know,
wells.
it's only been 2.
And it has to be thorough, it can't, we want him to, he's comfortable with the April meeting, and we have some issues getting to April as far as attendance goes, as far as officers and who knows what. So we have new members here who have to get up to speed. So I don't think any time before April is necessary. So if you want to have more discussion about that, guys, I don't know. I mean, we don't have to decide about it tonight either. We do have to let Steve go at some point. We'll let you know what date.
Well, I can work with whatever you
But
need
we're
me to do.
aiming,
Okay.
unless somebody feels really strongly and wants to talk about an earlier date.
Well, I think we should get this moving, because
I do
it's
too.
been
Yeah.
way too long, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna rant, but our selectmen are the ones we elected to dealing with this. And they put off this meeting, this whole thing on a committee. Now, technically, they should really be dealing with it. I mean,
They
it's-
will be in the end.
Yes.
Come on.
Okay, well,
We're a study group to examine options
Yeah.
and give them what we've discovered.
right,
So that's fair.
How about
but
March?
it's been a long time.
Well, I'm not here at all, Maurice.
Yeah, but he's just going to deliver the information.
Right.
And then at the April meeting, we'll decide.
That's a possibility.
Good?
Do you need anything else from the committee or the selectmen?
I will need some help in terms of organizing who's going to, what wells can we test? I mean, you have intimate knowledge of who has shallow dug wells that we could potentially test. And I could use some assistance with that, because you know the folks that live there, work there, have a business, own properties. So if someone can help me with that.
Who's got I don't know if anybody's got a shallow well.
Health?
I think Todd's is, for example.
Well,
your
the
building.
store, the store had very shallow water. There is a pump that goes down into it, but it's a dug.
But it's a dug well,
Yeah.
okay.
There's
I know
several-
there's gravity feed stuff that comes off the hill.
That's not so much of a concern.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, 'cause that's-
that's an all separate source of pollution, if you ask me. I've dealt with that before, and people
Really?
were drinking stuff that they didn't even know they were drinking because it had animal waste and everything else in it.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's what the.
knowingly they've done
what's her
that,
name?
drank that water, like,
DEP.
wow.
And Stroud indicated that that was almost certainly the case in West
Goes
Coast.
all the way up to Cream Hill Lake Pond
Oh, really?
Farms.
Chemicals from the farm.
No, not necessarily, doesn't have. to be
Scoville
chemicals.
kelp.
I mean, at one point, somebody did say that to do this really effectively, you should have storm drains also, right?
Well, we brought that up too. Many times when towns install us, there's various kinds of pollution. Some is from septic systems, and there's substantial evidence, not necessarily in West Cornwall, that stormwater is causing pollution of streams, rivers, lakes, ponds, surface waters, and that's kind of where the DEP's been moving towards, focusing on that issue. So many times when towns install a sanitary sewer system, they will look at a new storm drainage system as well, which can pre-treat the stormwater before it gets discharged to the river. My personal opinion is you really don't have that issue here. It's a very small area. The runoff is mostly, a lot of it's what we call sheet flow runoff onto grassy areas. I don't think there's too many pipes.
Well, there's still a stream that goes through the town anyway.
Yes, yeah.
And that comes from the farmland up
Well,
north.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's another issue that DEP looks at is farmland and potential pollution from farmland. But in your particular case, I don't think storm drainage is the main issue here. It's really the wastewater, adequate wastewater disposal.
Well, I don't think we can give you a precise delivery date, because there's clearly some discussion that has to be had. You don't need to be involved in that discussion, so.
No, but I'll do whatever I can do is wrap, I know Joanne's, everybody's anxious, we all are anxious for some answers, and I'm happy to get to work on it, so.
Okay.
I've been told to go ahead by the selectmen now, and I can go ahead.
Sound good. We'll be in touch. Thank you for coming. Anybody have any more questions? Any more need to, the public? Yeah, let's have.
I'm just wondering if it would be useful, especially for you good folks, if part of the document that you're drawing up, you create a grid where, has a site location.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna try to do.
Pros and cons,
Yeah.
costs, but then your recommendation for what system, what what septic technology, and then your rationale for something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, why do you want this system? Well, it's
Yeah, I've
cheaper,
done a lot of
it's more
studying.
efficient.
Right. I've done a lot of studying over the years of.
Because grids are really good, it
Yeah,
gives you
no.
a snapshot.
Yeah, exactly right. No, we're gonna do a matrix grid type of plus and minuses for the various, with a criteria in there. In terms of treatment technology, again, there's a lot of different treatment technologies if that's the way it's gonna go. You want something that's robust, reliable, and been done many times before, and you're not gonna be the guinea pigs. And I mean, some of the systems that you folks have been looking at, and I've gotten some literature, I've had experience with them, and in Connecticut, and that stuff we've designed, but they have not proven to be reliable in terms of meeting effluent limitations. And if you're putting something in the Housatonic River, it's got to be very reliable and consistently meet permit. And we'd be hesitant to recommend anything that doesn't do that all the time.
Good.
Steve, one final question. I've heard this mentioned now and again, but would most of these systems that would be under consideration require a trained
Yes.
employee,
Yes,
Yeah.
part-time,
part-time.
to
Yeah.
oversee them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it doesn't matter if you, people are not necessarily over this hump yet, but I can tell you right now that any type of discharge system, whether it's going into the ground, land disposal system, or going into the river, it's going to require treatment before it can do either one of those. Because you do not have the land area available to dilute the nitrogen and the pollutants down to the level that DEP is going to require. So therefore, any type of system to solve any issues in West Cornwall is going to require some form of treatment, which will require some form of operator.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the town will pay for that.
Well, that's part of the
Yes.
operation and
It's part of
maintenance.
the operation fee.
Yeah.
Sure.
For a small town, typically, they do contract operations, and you contract, go out to bid and contract with a company that has responsibility to meet the permit, and maintain the system properly.
I see. Yeah.
And it would be like the lighting district and the people
Yeah.
who are there who pay for that.
Mhm.
Well,
But the
if
town
they
would,
can.
well, I
Yeah,
was thinking
I mean,
the
that's,
town would.
that, it's the critical mass is the issue, how many
Yeah.
people.
Well, if we're going to sell it, I think the people who use it are going to have to pay for it.
If we could take
Well,
that
wait till you
cost
see
of
that
that
number.
person.
Before you write that check.
User costs, that would be very helpful.
I mean, that's typically one of the big costs with any treatment system is is personnel.
Yeah. I mean, we did get told that in New York State, it's only the users who pay for it.
That's typically in Connecticut. I know very few towns, municipalities that the users do not pay for the cost to maintain the system.
Users exclusively.
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Are you allowing
That's a
the public
burden.
to speak to Steve?
Yeah, to
now?
Steve, because he's gonna leave, yeah.
So Steve, what were your thoughts about going all the way up to the brush dump off of Route 128?
Well, it certainly is a site that's attractive in terms of it's isolated. It's quite a ways up the hill, obviously. That's the site I'm talking about, there's a sand and gravel pit there.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they just redid the bridge.
Yes, yeah. Now, I looked at that site, that's a possibility. I think power goes by that just as well as the rest, because power must come down the
Yes,
road
it
there.
Yeah.
So that's something we could look at as well.
I thought
Is
you
there
were,
enough acreage there?
Oh, absolutely.
Is there enough
Oh, for-
acreage there
for-
to do a traditional?
No, there's not, number one. Number two, the topography is horrendous for this type of, trying to do an underground. Have you been in there?
Yeah, when they were proposing the cell tower.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind
Yeah.
of multi-layered, but I
It's-
didn't go
It's,
in
the,
that.
the topography is like,
Oh, really?
every which way in the sun, moonscape. And then the ultimate discharge point for that land system would be the brook, one way or another. You have to have a ultimate point of concern of discharge. It would be renovated by the time the wastewater got there if you meet DEP criteria. But ultimately, the systems are designed to flow downhill or down gradient underground to a point of concern. The point of concern on that site would be the brook.
wouldn't it at Susan Hellman's house?
No, because they would treat at Susan Hellman's house and then pipe it down to the river. Everything would be sealed, completely sealed up.
As for the Hillsdale tour, I heard what Joanne heard about the licensed contractor, and I think you were confusing a couple of things because I corresponded with him after the fact. He definitely said we would be foolish to enter into a NIPD's permit. And any municipality, especially a municipality of 1,400 people who wants to willingly go up the regulatory ladder, climb up, and leave DEP and go to EPA is foolhardy. It's very expensive, it's very draconian, and it requires a lot of testing and other many hoops that you have to jump through. And renovated water, what is allowed to be discharged into the river is called renovated and potentially potable. But I have to tell you that the water that comes out, even after treatment, is loaded with pharmaceuticals, things like caffeine, in very large urban areas, a very high level of opioids because of what's going on. And this is contaminating
In
fish,
West
it's
Cornwall?
contaminating
Wow.
fish and biota
I didn't
in
know.
the Hudson and in the Housatonic.
But you're talking about West Cornwall, right?
Yes.
Opioids? And caffeine?
Well, from medications generally, I think.
I mean, I get it on a bigger picture.
I mean,
But we're talking about a small
medications,
town.
That is a concern in some communities, certainly. It could be here too. Well, the questions are, do you want to put those chemicals into the groundwater, or you want to try to properly treat them and put them in the river with a tremendous assimilative capacity? They're going to go into the ground. If they're going into a groundwater system, they're going into the groundwater, and then you're going to be drinking it. number one. Number two, any type of treatment system, whether it's discharging to the river or discharging to the groundwater, requires a permit, not one's a NIPD's, one's a groundwater permit. It requires almost the same level of testing of the treatment system either way, because you're treating the wastewater. The treatment plant has to be tested, the water has to be tested, the effluent has to be tested, no matter where you're discharging to. And they both require an operator. And you have to test the groundwater, and any kind of land treatment system, you additionally have to test the groundwater down gradient of your system to ensure that you're not polluting the groundwater of the state of Connecticut. So I don't necessarily agree that a NIPD's permit is astronomically higher cost than a groundwater
Yeah,
permit.
well, this is not the first time we've heard this debate, so.
And are you
That's
concerned that
interesting.
there's essentially no data yet? That I've said it from day one, I would certainly support a system if it's indicated. I will never support a system that discharges into the river. And I don't think that enough spots, other sites have been vetted adequately to ascertain a much less intensive traditional underground system with leaching capabilities. But there's no data. There's 2 holes that you dug that were down in dirty holes and grab samples for water at the bottom of those holes. And no one has tested, no one has had their septic system evaluated or scoped. Tue January Health is saying there's no problem under their purview with any of the systems. So the only thing that I can think of that could happen would be that homeowners and property owners would have to evaluate their systems, have them all fiber optic scoped, and then ascertain the level of function of those existing, and perhaps predict, by looking at the tanks, how long they're going to last, and if there's enough property left and soils left for a reserve code compliance system put into a plan by an engineer. That's the only way to ascertain.
That's not really a question. So you have another question for Steve? Otherwise, we're going to let him go, okay?
Again, every meeting, you interrupt me and you interrupt.
No, you sounded like you had
no one
finished the
else.
sentence.
I was asking him about data.
But I haven't heard a question.
And you only do it to women if you know.
Stop it, come on. Let's just carry on the
Okay.
conversation.
So Steve, what about data? And what about evaluating the systems in the village?
Let me point out a couple things. We didn't say that there was a pollution problem. What the purpose of this proposed system is not necessarily to solve septic system problems. It is to allow property owners, commercial property owners particularly, to do something with their property. And you said the health department says there's no problems, but the health department prepared a map which showed that 90% of the properties in the village area did not meet the health code. So by saying that they didn't think there's an issue, that is not correct. They have identified over 90% of the properties do not meet the current health code. Okay? So while I agree if this were a pollution problem issue, I would do more well testing, which we're going to do some more well testing to see if there's actually groundwater pollution. We did find some pollution in one of the wells. But that's not really the issue here. The issue is whether you want to develop the West Cornwall area or make it a more vibrant community such as it was back in the day.
Okay, so is this a question for Steve?
No.
Okay, well, let's let Steve go, and then we do have a,
I was just going to say the DEP, when they were speaking here,
Yep.
had mentioned they didn't see a problem, but they said if you have a problem, you can contact us.
Yep.
We'll go to the site,
Yep.
we'll check it out, and then we'll find out if there's a solution for it. So she didn't say, she said, as a matter of fact, you can't say it's because there is pollution here, it's because you want to expand businesses. Or let us know, and we'll come in and we'll look at the places. They did offer that.
it's always,
So,
yeah,
that's all.
The Torrington area health will check it well, won't they?
yeah, for
They
a
always
fee.
say they.
They'll come in.
Yeah, and this is going to be part of the next phase of what Steve's doing. There will be wells tested. Okay, so thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for accommodating.
Yeah.
My wife's still working. She's
Okay.
happy to get out. Get a ride home.
So we will have public comment at the end of this next phase of the agenda.
Thank you, folks. Thank you very much.
We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you all.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Bye.
So we need to elect officers. Okay, it's not just a done deal every year. We should start the year with discussion about anybody who wants to step up and
I think you're doing a
help
great
to
job.
lead the group. Well, thank you. But it's hard to be, it was great when there was a co-chairman, so I'd really like to ask, I mean, I'd be happy to continue on as chairman, but I'd like to be a co-chairman if possible. So if there's anybody here.
Who was the co-chairman this year?
Libby.
Dave, what did you, who would do that?
I'm away a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's part of my problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna be away for 2 months.
You're going away for 2 months?
No.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll be
I'm
away.
off and on.
I was hoping to be here this February meeting, but I'm good, it seems like I'm leaving the 13th, so I'm not gonna be here for that one. I'll definitely be gone March, but otherwise I should be around. I mean, we don't have to do it tonight, but if there's somebody who can run a meeting, feels like they can run a meeting,
We
wants to run a
have-
meeting.
We still have.
Who's not here?
How many
Ian's not?
open seats?
Just left. How many what?
Just left.
It's just Ian though. Is there another, we don't have another missing, right?
We added 3.
Yeah,
so
we added three.
that
We added
was-
3.
yeah.
That's
We added 3, I think we're full.
How about you? No? Yeah. You have a lot on
Thank
your
you,
plate,
I've
right?
got a lot on my plate right now.
All right, well, I'll do my best. But it may mean that I have to cancel the February meeting because I can't be here unless somebody
Well,
can
let
run
me
it.
ask you a question.
And March. That's why.
When are you leaving in February? Can we change the date to a slightly earlier
Well,
date in February?
The problem with the 13th, thanks to Betsy, we know it's a Wednesday, and it's a Wednesday because the Tuesday is a holiday.
Oh,
And because and I guess Monday's a holiday as well. Will this place be open Monday, the 11th?
I don't think
what
so.
holiday are we talking about?
What holiday is
Is it-
Monday?
Abraham Lincoln.
It isn't.
No, that's
Oh.
March, that's
12th,
January.
One of the
President's
presidents.
President's Day.
One of the
But
I don't
that
know.
That's
doesn't
the
mean the
18th,
Monday.
Could we do the Monday?
You could do it then. It's not a
All right,
national.
well, I
Well,
can
let's do it
definitely.
on the Monday.
All
The
right.
town office usually is closed on Lincoln's birthday.
Maybe it's Lincoln.
Specifically.
Maybe it's
So-
Lincoln.
Right, so if we
Which is the
change it,
12th.
it's a special meeting, so any agenda that goes out that has to be it, no additions. We don't do much in the way of additions.
So the 11th is next?
So let's vote on that, or is that how we do that, or? All those in favor of February?
So is that right,
Changing
Priscilla?
the meeting?
It's Monday, the 11th,
Monday
Yeah.
is the 11th, yes.
and then President's Day is the
Is the
12th.
12th.
Yeah,
No, I think Lincoln's
birthday.
birthday
Birthday's
is
the 12th.
later.
right.
President's Day is the
Monday is
18th.
President's
Yeah.
But, so Monday, Tuesday doesn't get celebrated on a
Yes,
national
the
level?
18th.
It's
You're
the
absolutely
national.
right, Richard.
Right.
This year, the 18th, which is the following Monday,
I
is
think
called
Monday's the town
President's
hall.
Day. So I
Monday.
think
But
that's
not
a federal
Tuesday.
holiday.
Monday, the 11th, the town hall should be open.
Right, but not
Yes.
Tuesday.
5 o'clock?
Okay,
5
Monday,
o'clock.
the 11th at 5 o'clock.
yeah,
Are we
here,
voting on that now?
I guess, yeah, in order.
All in
We-
favor?
We
You
could
know,
just,
you're
I don't know if we have to vote for it, I just call, I'll cancel the 13th and then reschedule a special meeting, or?
I have no objection to that.
You could make that date, correct?
I think so.
Good.
Yeah,
Yes, think
I
we should.
personally can make it, but do we have to vote on?
Yeah, just make a motion and
I make a motion that we reschedule our February meeting to Monday, the 11th, as opposed to Wednesday, the 13th,
I
so
second
that
that.
Todd Piker can be here.
I second that.
Any discussion? Okay.
All in favor?
Ready?
Aye.
Thank you.
So that takes care of the 11th. Now the 12th, I'm also not going to be here, and that's for sure, not the whole month, so.
In March.
Do you want to cancel that one now, or should we wait till February to talk about that? Because Gordon will be here on that one, hopefully, the 11th. Let's wait till February. Okay. All right, good, so that's that. So let's vote. Officers, I mean, how do you do that? Do you make a motion, or do
Somebody
you
presents
make a
a
slate?
slate.
Present
What's
a
the slate?
So,
well, I would like to offer the opportunity of someone else being the secretary, since I've been doing
I was
this
a
for 2
fear.
years.
Is there anybody else who'd be willing to be a secretary of these proceedings?
I have never done that before, but oh God, I'll try.
Joanne will give you pointers.
Okay,
Look at,
all right.
Oh, good.
yeah, the initials is a great thing. And
Yeah, I like
it's
that.
good, thorough. It's really important.
You know me, you think I can do it?
Thanks, Don.
Well, I can always video it, so that will give you a backup, all
All
right?
right, thank you.
That's
Okay.
what's
Yeah.
happening now, is being
Yeah.
videoed.
Great.
So Todd, you're saying
Yeah.
the officers have, when would the vote for the new officers be?
Tonight?
Right now, I think.
They'd like to do it tonight.
Yeah.
Just to start the year with a clean slate.
And you're not going to,
No, I'll be a chairman, but I would have liked there to have been a second.
So Betsy, why don't
Yeah.
you consider, it would be nice to have a fresh set of eyes as, as the vice chair. And,
And somebody who represents
Yeah.
the people that are concerned. I
Correct.
think that's important.
I'll give it a try. I do work
Awesome.
out of town. I'm not around a lot during the day.
Well,
but I'll communicate.
I'm right there to help you, and
That's
hopefully
great.
you're there to help me. And you've already helped enormously several times. Extra pair of eyes.
So, vice chair?
So we have a slate of myself, Betsy as co-chairs, and Don is going to take the secretary job.
And we don't have a treasurer, because we have
We
no
don't have
letter.
no money. So does somebody want to propose that?
I propose the slate as described.
Okay.
second up.
Seconded. Dave seconds.
Any discussion?
Any discussions?
All in favor?
Favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Todd,
So that's
Aye.
on behalf
Okay.
of, I think, everyone, I
That's
just
the whole
think
thing.
Yeah.
it's appropriate to thank you for doing
Here,
an
here.
incredible job.
Wow, thank you very much.
Really.
That's
You know, your leadership.
much appreciated.
It's been great, thank you.
It's a prickly pear, this
It
one,
is.
yeah.
But
yeah.
you've been a real diplomat,
Well, thank
in the
you.
things I've seen. That's-
And the
Nice.
information you provided
Yeah.
has been clear and concise. I really appreciate it. And every time you come up with something new, like the thing yesterday, the new from the lady down in Cornwall
Right,
Bridge,
yeah.
you forwarded it to us. I mean,
Yeah.
I find that very helpful.
Yeah, well,
That's
doing the
great.
public's work in the public eye,
Yeah.
that's what Gordon always says, so I like that line,
Yeah.
as much as possible. And now, public comment. Sir?
In regards to the letter that will be going out, question here, can you give me like a rough outline of the steps that will be taken to issue that?
To issue the letter?
Yeah,
To-
the public will have an opportunity to review the questions that goes around.
That's a good set of questions. I was really pleased when Gordon so readily volunteered that the selectmen would take care of that letter, because that's a tough letter, and they seem to understand what the parameters of inclusion are in that letter.
Have you
Joanne
selected, figured
made-
out when that's gonna happen, or you don't know yet?
At the earlier, I had suggested that we wait until
End of January.
the end of the January
Selectmen's meeting.
Yeah.
Selectmen's meeting, which is the 22nd of this month, which is when Gordon's back. That's why it's a week later than usual. And at that meeting, we will discuss this letter, and that will be public record. So
Well,
but
Joanne...
to do it before that, before Gordon gets back, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know about you, Richard, but
I don't see, no, we have to, we the selectmen have to figure out what
Yeah.
we're gonna say before we present it to anybody to.
And in the minutes from the last meeting, Joanne suggested
Going out
that...
to, I believe, all the people within the village of West Cornwall, asking whether they would be interested.
And we're going to review it before it gets mailed. That's the
the
concept.
selectmen's letter would come here to this committee.
Right.
And then you would,
So, to your question, the public will be at that meeting, and you can comment on it, but to what extent you can submit questions, I don't really know, because that would happen at the selectmen meeting. That might be the place to go
I'm not sure what, it's a pretty straightforward letter, I'm not sure what the concerns about what the questions would be.
I mean, yeah, do you have an example of what would be one of your questions? Well, perhaps
Well, I can
some of these.
come up with a whole list of questions, but it's kind of hard to come up with questions that they haven't seen in the letter.
Right, well, that was my
So, it comes to the meeting and then we have a public comment period during the committee meeting. That's fine. The other part of the question I have is when you get the responses from the neighborhood, are those going to be available online or are we going to be able to see what people say and what their situations are and how many people and all that?
I would think that individual responses would be confidential. That would be one of the reasons, and I'm not sure that people are going to want their information publicly stated, that they could choose to
Well,
or
I'm not
not.
saying how many toilets are in the house, I'm saying, is their system working there?
Well,
I think the data
I'm not
that,
sure people are going to be asked specifically whether their system is failing or not. I don't think that may or may not be one of the questions. The question is really, are they interested in hooking up to this system? Not what their current situation is what's their future situation. And it's been said a number of times, someone may have a system that's working, but they have a 2-bedroom system that works in their house, but they have a 4-bedroom house. Therefore, they're inadequately, they don't have full potential of the building that they're in, of the house or commercial space that they're in. Do they have a system that's polluting and failing? Probably not. But does the system reach the full potential for that building? Probably not. And those are two different issues. And then the third question is whether they want, regardless of the first two, do they want to hook up, or would they be interested in hooking up to this system, which is really the only question that I think this board would be interested in.
What level of specificity would this letter have, though? Are you going to hook into a system, or is it going to specify what the system is?
It's not going to specify what the system is because we don't know what it is.
How do they know if they want to hook into something?
That's why this letter has very little value at
well,
all.
that's the nature of this whole investigation. Putting the horse before the cart or the cart before the horse, you don't really quite know where that horse belongs.
What are the sites?
And the bottom line is what the cost is.
Right.
And we don't know any costs.
We don't know any cost yet, so that's the thing, we gotta get,
It was my understanding that this letter was only to get a broad gauge of the total number of people, basically, who aren't interested. I think that's really all we're going to find out.
It's fundamentally,
That's what I think.
it's data for Steve to parse his numbers and come up with a cost
But
per
Steve's
user.
already said he has the numbers in his head as to what it is, so I'm not sure what we're accomplishing with the mailing.
Well,
Yeah.
one of my final points
Yeah.
is, I agree with what Richard's saying, I think that's a good point. We will be told, the town will be told how many people want to get hooked up before it comes to a town meeting.
This speaks to the question of what's on the ballot. Or perhaps at a town meeting before a vote, there would be some discussion about that. But the specific wording that the town will make a decision about is yet to be determined because we haven't really
It's a very
discussed
interesting
that.
question, because I remember originally, when we first started, all of River Road, as well as Lower River Road, was included in this conversation. And I was flabbergasted at several of my neighbors on River Road who didn't want any part of it. And 3 of them I know do not have septic systems. They have cesspools. And I'm one of the people that has a newer septic system because it was put in 1982. So there's a record of it at Torrington Area Health. But I can name 3 of my neighbors that I know for a fact have cesspools, and they're not interested. My guess is they're concerned about the cost.
Right,
That's
but,
only a guess, but that's my guess. But to originally start and say they weren't interested, I was really shocked because I look at them and I think, but you look to me like you're reasonably intelligent people. How could you say no before you even know all the backup? Yes.
There are systems that they could put in, and they don't have to have this whole elaborate $4 million system.
It would cost a lot more.
I know it costs a lot. We have to do my parents who are up on a lake, Cedar Lake. It was probably going to cost $40,000, $50,000, but we don't expect the town to do it. And we've had people look at it. We've got a problem there, you know. But so and we'll get it straightened out. But there are people who have enough land that there are intricate systems and new systems now. So there, and you were, Steve McDonald was talking about smaller systems. If you can put smaller systems in key areas that we don't have to really look at or even know are there, that's one thing. But when you're talking about taking the toll house and filling the one building with a facility, a sewer right next to the covered bridge where people come to Cornwall, because it's a quaint little village, you know. And I just think that, I know you're exploring different opportunities and different systems, but I'd like to think that you're not going to try to go the cheapest route, try to get in the middle of town, one big thing, and really nobody in town really wants to look at it, or, and I know you say it's
That's
not
not
going to
true.
smell. I know you're saying it's not going to smell and there's not going to be any problems, but you really can't. You don't know that.
You know, a lot of it has to do with the economic viability of the town. I mean, we've got a situation right now.
Turning it a ghost town.
Well, it's not a ghost town.
Yes,
It
it
isn't a
is.
ghost town, but as far as the retail and the business aspect of it, there's very little going on. And so this is part of trying to make it, you know,
But it's
some
like
of
that in
this.
Torrington and Canaan and most of the towns, if you look, there's vacancies
I know,
everywhere.
but this is our town.
I know it's our
And
town,
we,
but
and
we
so we
are
should do
also
everything
people.
possible to try to, you know.
Right, well, it's a community of people that have lived there for 30 to 34 years, who live there, and it's their equity, it's their homes. And you're
well,
saying
just
there's-
anecdotally, somebody
I know you
on
want
that,
business. I know you want business, and we're not
right,
against
but
business.
anecdotally, somebody on that River Road who has expressed disinterest in the project is trying to sell their property right now and having great difficulty because, well, I don't want to release any
Somebody on Lower
names.
River Road?
No, on Upper River Road.
Upper River.
So, when the
They're trying
time
to sell.
comes to sell and
It's
you
a
go to
hard
the bank
thing. You
and
won't be
you
able to
s-
sell your place with this going on either, because everybody's going, well, geez, there might be a sewage treatment facility right next door to you, I'm not gonna buy that house,
that's
I mean,
why
let's
there's a
be
sense
honest.
of urgency about all of this.
you know, and
Make
I
it
just
happen
think there's
soon.
other, they can look into it, there's other systems, there's some very intricate systems,
There's plenty of residential settings that have sewage systems.
and there's
Right
plenty that
next to
don't,
them.
and the whole town isn't.
Rarely are there
There are a
communities
lot of
that don't.
places in Canaan, and I'm sure that if you went out.
Canaan's
and
full of
looked,
sewage,
there
town
are.
sewage. Canaan
I'm
has
just saying,
septic
there's some
systems.
people who don't have good septic systems.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sure, you know, and I just remember the DEP coming in and saying, we don't have any knowledge of that there's a problem. So let us know. We'll go right into the home and we'll check it out and we'll find out what the
Yeah, and then
problem
you
is.
put the town on order. You want to wait for that?
There's one, you know, there's two sides to everything.
Yeah, there's more than two sides.
Right, yeah, many.
Okay, any other public comments? Questions? Anybody want a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
We'll have some dinner.
second.
All those.
Yay!
All right, see you on the 11th. Thank you all.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to
Happy New
everybody.
Year.